Hi, my name's Kevin, and this is Food You Can Trust. Today on Food You Can Trust, we're going to look at raising chickens in your backyard. We're going to talk to George from Geo Growers, and we'll learn about farmers markets from Pam Boyer at the Westlake Farmers Market as her presentation at the Texas Organic Growers Association Annual Conference. For more information on Food You Can Trust, see foodyoucantrust.com. What do you think of these goats?
I'll never forget the first time. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Cradle on it. Who's going up into it? That one's so
And it's just getting so sophisticated. I have 4 farmers right now that are growing tomatoes in the market, and we're in January. I had a farmer 2 weeks ago that made $500 selling in the middle of January. I am so excited that somebody could make that much money in Texas in January when we were closing the market. Think if we had kept it open in the beginning, but in the beginning I only had 12 vendors. Now I have 26 in the winter and 40 in the spring. And it just is, it's very gratifying to see it grow, not for me, for the farmers. I do this as a community service. I've been supporting farmers for over 20 years. Mary Ann knows. I was doing when she lived in California when her and her ex-husband were farming. And I believe that the small family farm is disappearing. I don't believe, we know it's a fact, and especially in California, they talk about it all the time on NPR, and it's a scary thing, because that means that in 20 years from now, we're going to be getting all the exports from the third world countries, which means genetically engineered food, so we don't want to do that. So I'm going to do anything I can to support those farmers, because you guys work so hard, especially in Texas. I mean, it's amazing. In California, the farmers haven't made. I mean, it's hard to farm anyway, but I think you have a lot of strikes against you. So if you want to come into a farmer's market, if you want to do a couple things, pick what works for you. That's the most important thing. You pick farming because, 1, you thought you could be sustainable, and 2, you love this. And you don't want to resent what you're doing every day. Some of the farmers that come to my market, I mean, I've been eating organically for almost 30 years. It's important to me. Some of the farmers at my market grow, they don't spray, but they use chemicals in the ground, but like a fertilizer. But I know how much love goes into that product, and I will buy from them, because to me, if you love your product and you love what you're doing, it really shows, and you digest that when you eat it. And you also digest the chemicals too. But it's really important that you enjoy what you're doing. And if you enjoy coming to a farmer's market, it can be a blast. I have people like Dan Rohrer, he isn't there. Where's Dan? Where's he gone? He was here a minute ago. I think he had to leave. But I called up, I go, "Are you coming back?" And he didn't quite have enough to come back for the winter, and he said, "I really miss being there. I went through withdrawals." We were closed for 1 day between Christmas and New Year's, and it's like everybody missed it. It's just part of what you do. It becomes a routine. Plus, we all miss the money that we got from it too. It's like, where's that extra money?
Hold it down so I can get in its mouth.
And to have a lot of different products at the market, because in the winter, when you don't have as many farmers, you want to have varied things in a market. You want to have baked goods, whatever it is, that will bring people out. I give free coffee in the winter, but my boyfriend's a coffee roaster, so it's not a big deal for me to get all the time. But I give they go through about 100 cups of coffee every week and we run out. And the farmers enjoy it too. You want to keep the farmers happy. And sometimes when it's 36 degrees, you're just getting that coffee just to keep your hands warm because it's cold. But even at 36 degrees, we had so many customers out there today. It was just so much fun to see everybody out there. It's like people go there with their dogs. They love bringing their dogs out there. It's just something that, it's an outing for people. It's a healthy, happy outing. We have live music. Our music guy writes songs about the farmers market and organic foods. He's a real character, and we love him, and he's consistent, and when he's not out there, we get somebody else out there, and the music is really nice to have.
The police car approached us like a pair of headlights to a deer. Policeman said you don't have to go home, but you can stay here. So we went on down the road to that late night restaurant. Girl in braids and a big old smile asked us what we want. I said I'll have a glass of tea with a little twist of lime, but in no rush 'cause my clock is set on South Austin time.
We have three types of vendors. We have farmers, we have food manufacturers, and we also have craftspeople. The craftspeople I have just to fill out. I really don't want a lot of craftspeople there. It's not what my market is about. But between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's nice to have them there. You know, people came and bought some of their Christmas gifts there, and they got to support local artisans. Jewelry's always great. You know, I'm always turning away jewelry people, just because I don't want that many crafts vendors. I don't want to be known as that kind of market. So I have jewelry people and, you know, a soap person, a candle person. The food people are baked goods. Let's see, what else do we have? Sometimes we have organic meats. We have a shrimp lady. We have a smoked salmon person. We also have pestos and salsas, goat cheese, which is a farmer. Did I miss anybody what we eat out there? Oh, we have a pizza person that does empanadas also, and they're really good. I mean, their pizzas are amazing. It's just fun. People like fun food. One of the ladies is an alternative baker, and her table's amazing. I mean, she's got scones and pesto rolls and pizzas made of spelt, and a lot of people, you know, have food allergies, so they come and get stuff from her. And then we have the farmers. We have flower people in season. Flowers are beautiful. We're trying to build that market up a little bit.
Oh, natural coral. No, I
Still, we could both say you should have bought it. We sit there, we had the money, it wasn't like it was $100 billion.
It's been gone.
My love was my my precious, my dear, my comfort.
I saw the other people. That's why I went to not even good time for me.
Looking around.
Like decades, but no problem for a decade. And you'll get the 5 years.
This market I do not do that I run. I don't do it to make money. What I make in that market, I put back in the market. I'm not saying that I don't take a little for myself, but basically if you looked at my books ever, you would see how much goes back into that market. And I have another job, and that's the way I like it. This is a community service that I do, and it will always be a community service. Yeah.
What's the typical charge per booth?
I charge $15, and it's a $50 fee to get in. And this, when we first started, it was $10, and when I raised it to $15, I thought I'd never hear the end of it. So I've decided not to raise the booth fee. And I don't really need to either. Like I said, this is not my source of income, and I'm lucky that it doesn't have to be, so I don't have to worry about that. It's nice to have a little more just to put back into the market, to make more things. And we're working on all that. But it takes time. It takes time to build it. And, you know, one of the things that I really saw this year is I used to think that it was my market. And it's not my market anymore. I've had to create committees with my farmers because it got too big for one person to handle. And I was dealing with a lot of people's incomes that were a lot bigger than what I was bringing in. And when that happens, you feel very responsible. And you know, you can't just all of a sudden make decisions, oh, I don't feel like coming today, so we're going to close the market, which is sometimes what we used to do. And it's not that way anymore. If I close the market for a week, a lot of people's incomes get hurt. So I had to change my whole attitude with this market and go, wow, there's something different happening here now than when we first started. And people are depending on this market to come to it. And I need to really look at the bigger picture, which is what a market director does. It's almost like taking care of your flock. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I need to take care of all these people that come to sell their products. It's a big responsibility, and somebody's got to do it. But I couldn't do all of it. So I asked the farmers for help, and it's a good thing because it's their market. And they need to take responsibility for it also. It's not just me being responsible for their income. They need to be responsible also. And I am so glad that they want to be responsible to help and come to me with their ideas and come to me when they have problems, or come to somebody else when they have problems and have that other person come to me if they don't want to tell me.
Right.
Okay.
This is, you're Gary, right?
That's right, that's
From
me.
Harrison Creek Farm.
That's right.
Gary's a real farmer.
Well,
And the question I wanted to ask you, Gary, is we wanted to ask about these, what do they call them? People that like go to the loading dock and pick up vegetables and come down and pretend they're a farmer. What are those people called?
well, we can't say that.
Oh, okay. How do you recognize a real farmer if you go to a farmer's market so you won't get one of these guys? Is there special method?
Well, farmers come in a lot of different shapes and sizes,
Right,
so
right.
you know it's a little bit of a you got to have a little bit of a nose for it. That's
It's a good question.
it's
huh?
a great question because it's like going out and looking at a tomato plant and trying to determine whether that's a healthy tomato plant or a non-healthy tomato plant.
Or organic or super grow
Because,
tomato.
somebody, a person that has experience can, spot them right off. But someone just walking out for the first time, they go and they see all this beautiful stuff, and
They look at the outside instead of smelling the inside.
And the proof in the pudding is the quality when you cut it open and eat it. I think that's probably the true measure of what the product is. We always try to have a little bit of some odd size stuff in our, so that it's not all uniform.
Right, because mass-produced things are all uniform.
So that it has an indication there that it's a more of a homegrown quality type product, and not something that if it's all the same size and all the same color, you know, you can be a little bit suspect as to where it came from.
So maybe that's also with the farmers themselves. They're going to have a little bit of a little hitch in their get along, so to speak. They won't look like a city guy.
Well, you never can tell. There's a lot of imposters out there.
Yeah, yeah. So here at the Westlake Market, there's a group of farmers that kind of keep an eye on and make sure that these hustlers don't come in.
It's, you know, the way I look at it is that I'm not going to be at a market, you know, that has those type people there. You know, I've done this too long and worked too hard to put up with that nonsense.
Well, that's one of the things at Food You Can Trust. We want to make sure that if people are going to a farmer's market, they can actually getting something from a farmer that's local. And so that's what we're looking for. And this Westlake Market is a farmer's market that strives to keep those peddlers, that's what they're called, right?
That's the polite term.
That's the polite term. This is a market that keeps peddlers out, or at least is trying to.
It's, you know, you can never be 100% certain, but you can certainly make a lot of strides to indicate that, you know, make an effort to make sure that that is the case. Our feeling is that it's a lot easier to go buy regular produce, and the ones that have the certified organic produce, you can pretty well, you can rest assured that you're getting the real deal. From the real farmer.
Some years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot of state grants available to start community farmers markets. But for some reason or other, they seem to have lost control, and nobody polices the growers. So just as you mentioned earlier about the Dallas Farmers Market, we have so-called home growers who go purchase product at the farmers market from commercial growers, come back and then try to sell it out to the community as homegrown. Do you ever run into this type of problem?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have. It's been pretty good over the years. We have hecklers in the audience, 2 of them to be precise. Let's see. I am not a farmer. I cannot always tell who's growing things and who isn't. So I, at this point, rely on my farmers to tell me when they see something that doesn't look kosher. We've created a committee of farmers to go out when somebody is in question, to go out to their farm and see what they're growing, with me also. And there's 3 people that will go out to the farm. If you're a new farmer, you can't come in without an inspection. If you're an old farmer, we haven't quite decided if we're going to inspect everybody's farm or whether we're just going into, if the ones that are in question, we're going to go out and see. It's really not a good thing for the other farmers if you have peddlers in the market, because the farmers work so hard, as you know, that it's not fair for somebody to go buy something for 50 cents and sell it for $2 when you've spent all that time, you know, putting into it and then selling it. And this problem has occurred. We took care of it. Could happen again, and we'll take care of it when it happens. And you have to decide what the consequences are when this happens, whether the person gets thrown out right away, whether you give them one chance, and then if they do it again, it's up to the individual how they want to deal with it. But it's definitely not acceptable in my market, and will never be. So I need to be more aware. As I said, I'm not a farmer, and I don't always catch it, so I have to rely on the farmers to tell me, this isn't kosher. That's why when I turned to that lady today and I said, why didn't you tell me that these Girl Scout cookies, not that I could tell that she didn't bake those cookies, but you know, it's like, I only have two eyes, and I have a lot of responsibility going on during that market since I'm the only one manning it. So I count on other eyes to keep that market clean, and that's what I was talking about before, about making everybody feel a part of the market. So we all police the market. Did that answer your question?
How do you say that?
Pomeranke Farm?
Pomeranke Farm. Jackie's out here at the Westlake Farmers Market. And we've been talking a little bit about peddlers, and we know that Westlake Market works to keep peddlers out.
Right.
And I think a lot of people in public don't know what peddlers are.
There are people that go and buy produce from other places and resell. And that's, you don't get fresh produce that way.
Right. And they don't get to deal with a farmer that you can trust.
Right, that's true.
Our concept is food you can trust, so people
Right.
can get to know the farmer. So I was wondering if there's any way that people that come to a farmer's market might be able to identify if they're actually dealing with a farmer or if they're dealing with a peddler. Is there some characteristic that you could look for?
Well, it's hard to tell you that direction by just looking at a person to really to come to the market and be able to see the person there all the time, you know, and know that what they're really growing is theirs, and then when you see something different on the table, then you know that that's probably not what they're probably peddling it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would be able to tell. If it's something, if you come to the market pretty regular, you'll be able to know that, you know, what they're growing by looking at what they're on the table. All the
Now
time.
where's the Pomeranke Farm?
In Kingsbury, Texas.
Kingsbury is which direction?
About 14 miles east of San Marcos.
Okay. Well, thanks for talking with us,
Thank
Jackie.
you.
And
Have a good
we better
day.
get out of the way. You got some customers here.
Where's your location exactly?
We are in Austin, in Westlake, in the Westlake High School parking lot. And it's a very affluent area, which is nice. It's a community area. The people that basically come there are from Westlake. People don't like to drive too far to go to a market. Only crazy people like me will drive a long time to go to a market.
This is Danny from Pure Luck Organics. And we're talking about how can you recognize a peddler? A peddler is somebody who comes out and sells other people's stuff at the farmer's market. You know, we don't want to deal with a farmer, food you can trust.
Yeah, well, I think just knowing who you're dealing with is the thing.
You have to get to know the farmer.
I think so, yeah.
And
And then,
just-
of course, anybody in this market pretty well checked out.
Yeah, you guys are checking everybody out.
Right.
That's something I think the general public doesn't even know about, this idea of peddlers. They just assume that if somebody's at a farmer's market, they're actually a farmer, but a lot of these farmers markets are all peddlers.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't go to the other ones, but but I
But
know this
one-
one. I think anybody in this market you could pretty well trust.
So you don't have to like look for cow manure in their boots or anything like that.
I don't necessarily know. Some people just do the paperwork part of it, like me. So they might have clean fingernails, but
They're still a farmer. They're still involved in the production.
right.
Now you're doing this organic cheese that you raise all your own goats. This is goat cheese.
Yeah, we're a farmstead, which means you have your own goats and you use your own, make everything right there on your own place.
So this is what they call a value-added product.
Yeah. Because rather than just selling goat milk or something, we actually turn it into something else.
And the goats, are you breeding and raising them for babies yourself, or are you buying the babies
Mostly
somewhere
for
else?
ourselves, but we do
Uh-huh.
sell registered dairy goats.
So when we're ready to get some goats, we can come to you and
Right.
you'll give us a special deal.
Right.
Just like you give everybody.
Right.
But it looks like you got one of the more popular stands here. People are coming by to test out the cheeses.
And as always, Grace always showers when you allow it to happen. And the school opened up their parking lot to us. Of course, we had a petition from 500 Westlake people that had a lot of pull that wanted that market in Westlake. So we started 7 years ago, and I will always promote farmers markets. Like I said, I have another job. I sell advertising for a local theater in Austin, and I love doing that during the week. But I believe in supporting the small farmer. I think farmers are great at what they do, but not all of them are good at promoting themselves. And they don't have time. So that's what I do. I've been promoting farmers for over 20 years, probably do it till the day I die, and that's okay, because it's a great thing to do. And when I die, I'll be very happy that I did that. You know, it's like I contributed to this world. I contributed something positive. If you knew how many farmers that have started being conventional at our market and have switched their practices and growing, it's great. You know, they've switched over. And maybe not because it's their belief, but they've seen the finances are different. And to them, that's motivating. And to me, it doesn't matter as long as they switch over, because I am a big promoter of organic.
My produce is starting to get thin.
Oh,
not as much
then I'm
anymore.
gonna have to, I'm your lettuce lady that buys all the lettuce.
Well, you'll have to cut. There were some people that bought a lot of lettuce today. There was like, they buy $9 worth at one
I
time.
bought 15, I was here at 20 of 10 and had to come back last Saturday.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so that's $1.50.
Yes, no dollar.
Yeah.
Pamela, going back to the issue of certified organic or not certified organic, it would seem to me that the farther you get away from the people we sell to as growers, the more important certification is.
Yeah.
Because they don't know the grower.
Sure.
They don't know what he or she does. They don't know whether there's any integrity there and all that. And thus the reason for real close-knit regional food systems. You know, this garbage of shipping food all over the world is ridiculous. But we do it, and I do it, and we do kind of anything to stay alive. But it seems to me that where we really need to get back to is to the point where you know the grower, and I know you as the consumer, and I look at you and you look at me, and we can tell whether we're doing the right thing or not, and we can talk about that, and therefore organic certification or any kind of certification is not going to be necessary.
Unless you're a liar, which I have had in the market, not you.
But if...
Not you. I have. I mean, I've had people say they're organic and they're not, and that's a problem.
No, I understand, but if I live next to you or close to you and I see what you do, you know, then hopefully I can tell whether you're a liar. You know, the whole issue is trust. And
That's what the markets are about.
Yeah, if there isn't any trust, then we've got to have something that verifies basically what we do. And it's a real struggle. It's a struggle for us. It has been for years because it's been so expensive to do. But the other side of it is that there can be just as good a food that is not certified if there is integrity with the people that grow it. Just like, even if you are certified, if you don't have any integrity, there isn't anything there of value anyway.
So this is how we start our day. I have my layers here. They're ready for some food. This is called the chicken tractor. And every day I move this chicken tractor. It's some fresh grass. Probably the most important part of their diet is sunshine and fresh pasture. So we make sure they have fresh pasture each day by moving the pen. This also makes sure that they are not standing around in their own manure, so they stay cleaner too. If you're inside the box, you want to come over and take a look. I have laying boxes here. I keep the laying boxes covered up at night with this board to keep them from going in there nights they stay out here on these things. And over here I have my waterer. Just fill up this bucket and it drains down into the water at the bottom. So they just come out in a couple hours and we'll have some eggs. Now we'll go over here and look at our broiler chicks. The broiler chicks are very different than the layers. These broiler chicks are about 3.5 weeks old, almost 4 weeks old. And you can see that their chicken tractor is a little bit bigger. There's about 27 of them in here. You can see they're just starting to get their full feathers in. There's some of them that have the feathers and some of them are still growing them out. Now they'll move their cage over this way. These guys aren't quite as used to the moving process yet as the layers. Chickens aren't really energetic enough to go out to get fresh pasture. So this way we make sure that they get fresh pasture because we kind of force them onto it. Every day they'll eat about 30% of their diet from this grass. This is part of their diet that has the highest nutrition. All the additives that people put into chicken feed try to make up for not having grass in their diet. So they need a little water. I'm going to get some water for them. You can take a look at them for a minute if you want. Trying to see if this water is working right. Seems to be clogged or something. There we go. It was running low last night and something must have got clogged up in it. You want to make sure they have plenty of water all the time. I think we'll see here that they're a little bit thirsty this morning. They probably just ran out of water a few minutes ago. This water works by weight. When it gets light, it lets more water in. Now we'll give them some food. The layers only eat about 4 cups of food a day for those 8 birds. But that's about half a pound of food per bird. These guys, give them all the food they can eat because you want them to grow up. Because you're going to sell them by the pound. And you'll see that they're very interested in food. You can see them all gather around the feeder. They already put food in there. Several of them are smart enough to know that when I'm over here to put the food in, they come right to it. So that's the morning setup. It just takes a few minutes. And you can be raising your own chickens in your backyard with a chicken tractor. Now I'm gonna go take a shower. All right, we're here at Geo Growers with George. George here at Geo Growers. Hi, George.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about Geo Growers? How you got started? What it's about? That kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, I got started in 1971 trying to make soil. In 1972, I started making potting soil, and by 1973, I had a really good one. It was called Amazon River Basin Potting Soil. And I was one of the first people, I was the only person in Austin with a commercial greenhouse that was totally organic. And that was starting in about 1971. And I've been in this area since 1969. Been interested in organics from the very beginning. Organic soil, organic horticulture, and now organic farming is really my main interest.
So Geo Growers is your slogan is "We make dirt." You want to tell us about some of the kinds of dirt you have out here?
Sure.
He's making some dirt right over there right now, right?
Exactly. This is a soil blend. It's made out of fully composted dairy cow manure. It's made out of granite sand and also rice hulls and gypsum. And
so he's mixing these things together right now.
Right, right. And those things, none of them have weeds in them, so I'm making a weed-free soil.
Uh-huh. And some of these different mixes you have around here.
Right. Now, right over there is a certified organic turkey manure compost. And that's the material that we make our ranch rose out of.
That's the kind I got last time.
Yeah, yeah. Real good for roses. All of these soils, the most interesting thing about them is something almost totally unknown in the annals of soil fertility is soil loft. Soils must have loft in order to be functional. That means they're fluffy enough to get air down inside of them. If you can get air down to the roots where the microorganisms have colonized the roots, you have a productive soil.
So this has to do with no-till farming then. If you're interested in no-till farming, you want this kind of soil.
Exactly. Right. If you're interested in gardening, this is the soil for you. It'll last year after year. You don't have to do anything to it.
So this is your original garden soil here in this pile, right?
Right.
Got different signs on them, and that's for native plants over there, you said?
Right, the thunder dirt is for native plants.
And this is the rose?
That's the rose mix for roses. You can grow hybrid teas. You can grow any rose in the world in that stuff.
And got some mulch back there.
Right, that's a native shredded chipped cedar. That's a chipped cedar mulch there.
And then we've got here limestone.
No, that's not limestone. That's gypsum. That's locally mined. That's calcium sulfate. It's an available form of calcium. Very, very available to plants.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about GeoGrowers and what you're doing? Or?
Yeah, we're also, I'll tell you what, we'll move to a little quieter spot and I'll tell you the philosophy of it.
Okay.
Okay. For us, the object of the game is to get people involved in agriculture, to buy directly from the farmer, have farming become profitable again. Farming, as you probably already know, is the backbone of any economy. The farm is the power gear that drives the wheel of all economies. Farming is what provides us with wealth that does not have to be repaid. Farming income is very different from borrowed income. Farming income is earned income. Borrowed income has to be paid back. So that's why I want to get everybody involved in it. That's why we're having farmers markets out here starting April 6th. And we'll have spots for gardeners, successful gardeners who have just, buckets and buckets of tomatoes, and their neighbors are sick of all the tomatoes they're bringing them out here and sell them.
And make sure you charge enough. Don't put the small farmers out of business.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we want
so that's what we're about on Food You Can Trust too, getting this small farm economy going back again.
Exactly.
And getting people to know the farmer. I think that's the most important thing. So we're on the right track.
That's it. Stand eye to eye, toe to toe with the guy that grows the food. Yeah, and this book in my hand is something I believe I should call your attention to. This was written by a fellow named Charles Walters, who is the editor of Acres USA. And Charles Walters is probably one of the greatest living heroes of today. He's the one that's taken the time to explain why it is that farming is the backbone of any economy. I've got a picture of him here on the back. It's probably not going to show up real good.
Now he just moved to Austin, right? The Acres USA.
The office moved here. The headquarters are here. I think he's still back in Kansas, but his son Fred is here.
Oh, okay, that's what I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this book is all about what I just mentioned. This is about a par economy. This is paying farmers what their crop is worth. People will think all kinds of things left and right, but the fact is our Constitution requires that all sectors of the economy be on par with one another. That's where the word parity comes from. Parity farming, parity prices, all of these things make for a prosperous nation. It's how we balance a budget, don't run into deficits. The whole story is in this book, and I think you'll be fascinated to read what it is.
All right, thanks, George.
Sure, you're welcome.
Now tell us where GeoGrowers is. We're out here in Cedar Valley.
We're out here in Cedar Valley. We're behind the Cedar Valley Liquor Store, which is across the street from the Cedar Valley Grocery. If you're coming from Austin, the first thing you're going to see off on the left is McCoy's, and then get ready to turn right because it's coming up. And when you make that right turn, it's a dirt road. There's a sign out by the highway that says, "We make dirt."
So I know we're in the right place.
You know you're in the right place.
All right, thanks for talking to us, George.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Kevin and welcome to Food You Can Trust. This time on the show, I'm babysitting Kim Alexander's farm and we're going to go through a day in the life of pastured farming. One of the first things I do is go out and visually inspect the cattle. And you can see they're out here having their morning repast. Got some 40 head of cattle. Looks like they're doing okay. Since the cows are completely grass-fed, I don't have to worry about feeding them. I just move their pasture every so often and check their minerals and their water. These cows are very well trained with the electric fence. You see there's a single strand of fence that keeps them in bounds, and when it's time to move them, I just call them and they come running. Here's their bucket of minerals. Looks like they still have some left. And our watering system, which is simply a hose run to a trough that has an automatic waterer in it. Pretty low maintenance. Just make sure the cows are doing all right. We actually have a cow. That may be our new calf right over there. Let's take a look at her. I think this calf was just born in the last couple days. No, that one has a tag on its ear. There's likely to be a new calf out here in the next couple days. This is Bluebell, our milk cow. We'll be seeing more of her in a minute. One of the first things we do in the morning, we get started about 6:30 or 7. What I call my morning exercise is to load up a couple 100 pounds of chicken feed so we can go out and feed the chickens, which is the first thing on the agenda. Okay, now it's 7:30. Had my coffee, aired up the tractor tire, and I'm going to feed the first batch of chickens. I want to show you the electric gate. Electric fence is the main thing in all pastured farming. Keeps the animals in line. This gate, you can see, has 2 connections. This one here is not connected to the electricity, so you can close it if you want without electricity. This one here has electricity in it. You can hear a little spark, and we simply open that gate. That's taking off the electricity. It's like an on-off switch, which will turn off the electricity to the fence over here. Here's my first batch of pullets that I'm going to feed. You can see they're all gathered here on the corner. They're real interested in seeing me because I'm bringing them some food. We also have a goose here that my daughter affectionately calls Mean Goose. And there's a couple of roosters here that are prone to come and attack me when I'm carrying the food in. We'll see how I do this morning. Okay, we successfully loaded 50 pounds of food into these 3 feeders. And you see the chickens are all happily eating their chicken feed. They also feed on the grass. That's an important part here, that we want to have as much of their food come from grazing fresh pasture. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. There's already some chickens in the eggmobile laying eggs, which we'll also talk about more in a little bit. Now on to the next group of chickens. Now we're going out to the main eggmobile. About 400 chickens out here, and God willing, we'll move this 400 chickens today to new pasture. There's always an adventure to see how much we can get done. There's a couple chickens that have gotten loose. And hopefully I won't run them over. And all the chickens are saying good morning to me. So first thing, I'm going to go get a hold of these chickens. Okay, now it's 7:45. You can see I'm already breaking sweat pretty good. I'm going to go inside here. I'll show you how we get over the electric fence. This fence is electrified. As you can see by the chickens going outside of it, the fence doesn't really keep the chickens in, it keeps the predators out. The way we walk over the fence is just step down on it with their foot, make sure that the fence does not touch your feet. Now the chickens, you can see, are all feeding, or most of them are. Some of them are following me around thinking I have more food for them. We've got 4 feeding troughs here. I put out 100 pounds of food. Usually put out a little bit more, which the chickens will eat completely every day. Now we're going inside the eggmobile. This is where the hens lay their eggs. We fold up these bars to which the chickens use to get in, which is only partially successful. So we want to keep the chickens from going in here at night so that we don't get manure in where the eggs are. We want the eggs to be as clean as possible. And you can see that the chickens are immediately going up here so they can begin laying their eggs. These 400 chickens will produce up to 36 dozen eggs a day. So here's some eggs from yesterday that we missed. I'll put them up top here. The chickens will lay eggs all day long, but most of them will lay around noontime, which is when we'll do our first egg collection. Right now I just want to open up the laying boxes so the chickens can go in there and get about their business of laying eggs. Over here you see our electric fence. There's a solar collector which goes to some batteries down here, and that goes up to the fence controller. And if it's working right, there'll be a little flashing light in there. And that goes out here to our grounding stake, which is there in the ground. And the wire goes out to the fence, which keeps the fence hot. And as I said before, the fence is primarily to keep the coyotes from coming and getting the chickens. And here we've got a very low rate of losing chickens to coyotes and other predators. That's our water tank over there. There's a water tank inside the eggmobile, but Kim set up a bigger water tank so I wouldn't have to change it while I was taking care of the farm. So it's not 8 o'clock yet. I've fed most of the birds. We've opened up the eggmobile. We'll be back here in a little while to see if we can move to fresh pasture. You can see they picked through the pasture, and we're going to move them right over to this space right over here, which is nice and green. And we'll go through that in a few minutes. Okay, now it's 10 after 8, and I've set up the fence for the new pasture. So all I need to do is get the tractor over here and move the eggmobile over here, and all these chickens will be happy to go onto fresh pasture. Okay, we're going in to see the broilers. The broilers are a completely different kind of chicken than the layers. These are meat birds, and they're only a couple months old, but they're bred to gain weight. You can see they're a lot bigger birds than the hens. The hens don't start laying until they're about 6 months old. I just gave them some food, so they're starting to eat that food. Generally give the broilers as much food as they want because we want them to gain weight. And we're going to give them a little extra treat today. And this is some food scraps. Looks pretty gross to us humans, but they will love it. It's gourmet for them. While we're out here and it's a little bit quieter, I can show you the watering system. We have a system of what's called nipple waterers. You can see these little nipples that the chickens drink out of. These chickens also have an additional waterer, which I'm filling up right now, since they only have one nipple waterer. And the broilers need a lot more water because they're not as heat tolerant as the hens. And that's why we don't have very many broilers right now. This is the last batch of the season. We'll start new batches in September, but during July and August it's just too hot for the broilers. That's another reason we have this little shade mobile here, which is actually just a carport set up, and we've cut off the legs and put some pipe on the bottom so that it can be dragged around every couple days. We move it around because the chickens lounge into here so much, they get a lot of manure. You can see it was over here last, and it's a lot, the grass is depleted a lot more than just outside of it. So we need to move this every couple days. We have stakes in here which keep it from blowing away when the wind comes up. And there's also a little door on one end in case we start having nighttime predators like owls. We can put the door down to keep the chickens safer at night. And you can see these birds are completely different than birds raised in a confinement house. You know, chickens that are in a barn all the time, that never see the sunlight. They're in cages or else in a barn, and they never see the sunlight. These guys are always in the sunlight. They're always eating fresh forage. You can see they're out trimming the outside areas. They get lots of exercise so that their muscles are much more developed. Actually, you know, confinement chickens don't have any muscle at all. They just have sponge. And these chickens are completely different. And if you ever taste one, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, on to the next course of business. Okay, we're about 8:30. We're running about half hour behind schedule. Here's some kittens. And the mama. Kittens are happy when we have extra milk. The next item on the agenda is to check the turkeys. These turkeys are in what they call the chick chalet. This is a little brooder house. And these turkeys are about 3 or 4 weeks old. Again, we have the nipple watering system and the little hover that allows the birds to stay warm. It also keeps the light on them at night so they'll eat more and gain more weight. It looks like they need a little food. These turkeys are already capable of flying all over the place, and you'll notice that the cat is coming up to look. The cat's very interested in the turkeys. We get a little turkey food there. I just make sure the door is closed so that the cat doesn't come in and investigate. And we'll give a little turkey food to these turkey chicks. While they're in the brooder house, we don't have to give them too much attention. Just check them every day, make sure they're all healthy looking. They look pretty alert, and everything's fine in here. Every couple days we'll put in some more wood chips. We got a big pile of wood chips here that keeps their bedding from getting too built up with manure. And actually having this bedding built up like that gives them an extra guard against disease. Here's a vegetable garden over here. Most people think of a garden as a small patch, but if you've got a 200-acre farm, this is a small patch. We've got watermelons and gourds and a couple big rows of tomatoes, string beans, squash, zucchini, potatoes, onions. So this is just a little garden. A little bit of corn left. You see squash under there. So now we're ready to go milk the cow. Elsa is up and at him. Hi, Elsa. Take the cow. Elsa has become quite adept at working on the farm. Yesterday when we had to go into town, Elsa's got her boots on too. Yesterday when we went into town, Elsa didn't want to go into our old house. She wanted to come back out to the farm. You like it?
House to sheep.
No, we want to stay on the farm. So, here we go out to get the cow milk. Nothing tastes better than raw milk in your coffee or on your cereal. But the only way to get it is by milking your own cow. There's also a couple wild chickens here. You can see the chick with its mother. The thing about the farm, it attracts a lot of animals. Now this electric wire here, this is just a simple electrified twine, and that twine is not even turned on, but since our milk cow here is so well trained with the electric fence, she doesn't even challenge it. She doesn't care if it's turned on. She doesn't even check it. Come on, Bluebell. So we lead Bluebell over here to the milking area. You notice we don't have any milking shed. We just hook her up to a tree. Okay, Bluebell. Good girl. So before we milk, take a rag and clean the udders off real good. Of course, the cow is laying on the ground, so sometimes her udders get pretty dirty. And we want to make sure that nothing's falling into our milk bucket. Then when she's all clean, we dry her off. And we're ready for milking. So we're just getting started here with the milking. In about 20 minutes we'll have a couple gallons of milk. Definitely an acquired talent. We're just starting to get into it after a week. Okay, that's good.
Yep. Kitty, 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 kitty.
This is one of our fans of milking here. She really gets a direct milk treatment.
She's on the bus.
Hi Elsa, are we singing a song?
Yeah.
Singing a song while we milk? Looks like we're getting close to 2 gallons. We milk a cow twice a day. Leah's going after it. The cat's cleaning up its milky paws.
I see that.
What do you think of milking, Leah?
I think it's great.
I see that.
Oh, Elsa, we want to see you. We don't want you to see the camera. Okay.
Elsa,
We're
show
behind
them how you
schedule.
pat the cow.
You gonna pat the cow, Elsa?
You want to pat her leg?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe later.
Okay. Looks like we've got a little bit over 2 gallons of milk. And time for Bluebell to have her special snack. She knows all about this snack. There's actually a little minerals and chicken feed. And she's a happy camper. You see her eyes light up. Okay, Bluebell, thanks for the milk. Okay, now we have the milk here in the bucket and we're pouring it through this handy little milk filtering system. And we see how fast the milk goes down. You can see it's draining right down. That means the milk's good. If it drains a little bit slow, what do you think, Leah? Is it too slow? It's kind of on the edge.
No, I think it's pretty
It's
fast.
draining good. If it drains too slow, that means the cow has a little mastitis and we'll end up giving the milk to the chickens. But this milk looks good and we've been having pretty good milk most of the week. Then we put it into jars, these 1 gallon jars. Of course, we have to sterilize all this stuff. So that's the raw milk process. Like I said, the only way to get raw milk is to have a cow, so everybody go out and get a cow. Fun, right, Leah? She can't wait to have her own.
I know, I think it sounds great.
Okay, now we're fixing to move the chickens to the new pasture. So I just grab the fence and the chickens will run over to the new pasture. Okay, we're back here. It's 11:30 now. We're really running behind schedule. Chickens are eating in the shade. The tractor, both the battery went dead and it ran out of gas. But the tractor is now hooked up to the eggmobile. We're collecting some eggs. Are you helping with eggs, Elsa? Can you find an egg? This is the egg collecting procedure. Leah will show us the egg collecting procedure. Putting the eggs right in there.
This one's kind of dirty.
We've got a dirty egg basket. We soak the dirty eggs and then clean them off. The clean eggs go right into the carton. You just look the eggs over, make sure they're clean. This one has a little mark on it, so you can wipe that one.
Oh, you missed the washcloth procedure. I guess that's
Get to the washcloth. We get a damp washcloth. The ones that are just a little bit dirty, we wipe off and then put them in the carton. Sometimes we put them in flats. I probably wouldn't leave this. The chicken lab would knock it over. And then we put the cartons in the milk crates. Okay, it's Kevin. We're back. It's 6:30 now. We've got the tractor repairs done. Chickens are settling into their new grazing area. There's a little mud bath, swimming pool. with diatomaceous earth. They're eating here out of their trough, which has been moved over. We'll probably have to move the fence tomorrow. You can see the fence line if you're wondering about if they're really grazing the grass. You can see the difference right down that fence line. A lot of these chickens right now are more interested in shade than they are in food, so they're over having mud baths. This is how chickens wash themselves. They get down in the dirt. You can see these guys taking full advantage of the open dirt area in this overgrazed section to do their mud bath. See how they scratch the mud up, scratch the dirt up under their feathers to clean themselves out. And that's what most of these guys are doing over here right now. You can see them scratching up the mud, looking for bugs. General happy cooing sound, what Kim calls the sound of happy chickens. They're glad to have some new pasture. Some people hanging out here on the water line. See them using the nipple water. They really need the water in this heat. So we'll go inside and gather the rest of the eggs. This is our second egg capture today. This particular group of about 400 chickens will lay approximately 30 dozen eggs, 30 to 35 dozen eggs a day. And we handpick each one of these eggs as we showed you earlier. Then I'll hook up the electric fence for the night, and tomorrow we'll move the fence. Okay, it's 7:30 now, and we're doing our last milking of the day. Anything to say, Elsa? Do you like the farm? Yeah? Here comes the kitty. Get some milk. Leah's cleaning up. You getting tired yet, Leah?
Yep.
Farming's a real workout, but it's missing some of the pressures of life in the city. Well, thanks for staying with us during our day at the Alexander Family Farm. I think that about covers it. We did have a birth today, a new calf we just saw out in the field as we came in from milking. So that's exciting. And my favorite part of the day, of course, is dinner time, which is always good at the farm. We've got a chicken from here on the farm, some chard, and we need to stir, and some rice with almonds and raisins in it. We've been eating really well out here at the farm, which is really the big reward, having food you can trust. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you next time.
Our next speaker really doesn't need an introduction if you know anything about gardening. Mr. Malcolm Beck and Delphine Beck have been operating Gardenville since 1957. One of the first commercial composters in these parts. He's very successful. He's written several books, the Buck book, the Organic Vegetable Gardening book, several books. He just lives over here in San Antonio. He has a keen eye of observation, which has told him a lot more over the years than a lot of the PhDs know. So let's welcome Malcolm Beck.
Good evening. kind of feel at home here. My roots are Red Rock, Texas. Y'all know where Red Rock is?
Oh, yeah.
Red Rock. Yeah, I was born there. All my aunts and uncles. I still got an aunt Bastrop here. Can we douse some? Don't call yourself a gardener till you grow tomatoes like that. That guy's in the Guinness Book of Records numerous times. And believe it or not, his fertilizer was all organic.
I photographed it.
He lives in Birmingham, Alabama, and they grow a lot of kudzu over there. Well, kudzu grows over there whether they want it to or not. And he chops up kudzu and makes compost out of it with a little bit of kitchen waste. And he tills that into his sandy soil, and then he mulches alfalfa hay. That's really where the fertilizer comes from. And then he mulches on top of the alfalfa with wheat straw, so he gets a reflection. And those are 4 plants. Each one of them produces about 227 pounds. He usually has a scaffold around that, but he picks down and takes pictures. Anyway, there's our home. Of course, the farm, the yard's all organic. Delphine does that, but now she's got the grandkids, and she's trying to get them to do the work, and they don't quite look as good. And there's one view of our farm, and Dale likes flowers, and we tried marigolds, and next year we had about 6 rows of marigolds all through the garden. And we sold a few flowers. It was fun growing them. The way we would farm, the first year that I started out, I had about 5 or 6 acres, all in vegetables like that. And Dale came to me and she said, now how am I going to get those tomatoes and stuff out of the middle of that patch? Well, an old guy told me once, if you farm half your land, do it right, you can make more money than trying to do it fence over fence over. So from then on, we would do a 33-row strip. But 22 row strip. 22 row strip of vegetables and a 22 or 44 strip of cover crop and continue on like that. And then we could drive on both sides of the vegetables over the cover crop. And then we would rotate from cover crop to vegetable crop. And that did real good if you got the room to do it. There's the vegetables we grew. Back then, when we started, very few people knew what organically grown vegetables were. And our biggest market was a grocery store in San Antonio, Waste Mile Market. And the reason it was such a good market, the man that owned the store, George Waits, he grew up on a vegetable farm, and he knew what it was to grow vegetables. Well, the first year I took a load of vegetables in there, and I tried to talk him into buying organic vegetables, and he said, no, I don't want organic vegetables, they're full of holes, and they're bit up, and then he wouldn't even talk to me. So I came back home, and Dale said, well, I'll go talk to him. Well, she tripped herself up kind of pretty. And she told him to come out. Oh, she told him, I got some organic vegetables I'd like to show you. He said, lady, I had to run it off yesterday. Trying to Dale said, well, won't you at least come look at them? And he came out and looked and picked up. He said, well, they're beautiful. What do you want for them? Anyway, she said, let's market, and from then on, our market was there. Now, we tried to sell on the farm. And if the people drove out in old gingham dress, in work clothes, boy, they praised you, they paid you a good price and gave you a gift. But if they drove up in a new Buick or Cadillac, they were gone. They complained about the price. They said, it don't cost you nothing to grow it. Anyway, our first little farm was 11 acres. It was at Boateville, Texas, outside of Red Rock. And that little place, I finally had 75 palm trees, dozen fruit trees, acre and garden. I had sheep and milk cows and everything. This place was beautiful. I mean, manicured, it was really pretty. And the extension service came out several times. Finally, Sam Cotter came out one day with some other guys, and they looked around and said, Beck, this is beautiful. He said, you're not sure you're not using any of our modern chemicals? I said, no, I'm being a purist. I make a living working on a railroad. My farm was really a hobby. Anyway, Sam Cotter said, well, this is nice, but this is not practical on large acres. He said, we have to feed the world. So here's a new challenge. I just got through building Delphine a new house. Worked 2 years on it, built it all myself. Went in the house and I told Dale, I said, we're going to sell this little place and go buy a big place. And she never ever said, "You crazy?" No, she just comes back to us, but she knows how to handle it. Anyway, she said, "All right, if we're gonna move, I wanna go from Alabama." She said, "I want a house far back off the road. I want a big plywood tree in the front yard." She said, "I want good deep dark soil. I want a creek running through the place. I want a deer on the place." Well, for fun, her and I was driving around the old farm. We found that farm that she described. Boy, that thing wore out. Been farmed to death for 82 years. In a good year, Johnson dress wouldn't even grow me high. We moved there in August, so we got settled in. I decided I'd put in fall garden. I took my tractor and I bedded up some land, drug the beds off, and then mixed seed. I always mixed lettuce and carrots and beets and stuff like that, you know, fall stuff together and planted all in a row like I'm doing here. And then we eat it. And I did that. Those plants came up and then stopped. They wouldn't grow any further. The seed couldn't feed them. They wouldn't grow any further. Then I knew I tore that land really well. So I cleaned out the old cow pen that was there. It wasn't hardly any manure left, and scraped up the dirt and prepared the seed bed right beside these plants. And planted from the same seed. And irrigated it all. Now let me show you those plants. Look at those plants. I snap that picture and turn around and snap this picture. These plants are 10 days older than these. But you see what little calendar and soil do? Now I read an article in Neil Sperry's magazine said if you put calendar around a plant, it'll turn yellow because there's no nitrogen. I don't think you grew one for them, did you? Anyway, the farm finally grew into a compost company, and then pretty soon, pretty soon we had a business bigger than we even wanted. And I started making bagged organic fertilizer. Some of y'all may have seen it, our soil food. Our first one was a 622 fertilizer. Well, one of my employees was a big golf player and everything, and he played golf with a guy named Gerald Fugere over in Gonzales. And he gave Gerald a bag of our 622 fertilizer. Well, it'd be nice to call. He tried it. Now, he's got a little greenhouse operation, actually it's a shade house operation, he grows native plants, and he tried it in these two beds right here. And when he saw the difference, he called Paul and said, "You and Beck better get down there and see this." We went down there and took us in his shade house, and he said he'd been growing this variety ever since he got out of college, 16 years. He said, "The best fertilizer I found was Osmocote." He said, "But where I used your fertilizer," he says, "I'm not losing any plants. Osmocote, when the weather gets hot, I lose plants to root rot." He said, "I can go to market as much as 6 weeks sooner." Then he said, "Put up one of the better plants here, and any plant here, look at the roots. Look at the difference. See what organic fertilizer does?" I asked Gerald, I said, "What do you think the difference is?" He said, "I don't really know. It's got to be biological." He's learning. Look at the difference in the growth. Anyway, after about 3 years, though, Gerald stopped buying my fertilizer. And I ran into him at a meeting one day, and I said, "Gerald, whose fertilizer are you buying?" He said, "Malcolm, I live in Gonzales. There's chicken houses all around there." He said, "Rotten Chicken Manure does the same thing." Anyway, I want to talk about planet Earth for a minute. The only planet that sustains life as we know it, as far as that goes, the only planet that sustains life. All life on Earth is sustained and maintained by a thin layer of soil. Well, in the beginning, there was no soil on Earth. It was all rock. Well, you can't have soil because it takes life forms to build soil. But you can't have life unless you got soil to support it. Probably the first life on Earth looked something like that. The microbes could live on a rock, etch away at it, die on it, decompose on it, and just start forming little minute particles of compost and build it in the soil and filter it out into the cracks, and then pretty soon you have rock. You can go up to Enchanted Rock near Fredericksburg. You can watch soil being formed as that granite rock moves off. Well, grass is probably the most important plant on Earth. In fact, if you read, I think, the Gideon Bible, it says that the first life God put on Earth was grass. Well, the grass, as it grows, it pretty soon covers the earth. This way a prairie used to look. This is up at Jacksboro, Texas. It's north of San Antonio, about 200 some miles. This is on those HRM ranchers' place, 15,000 acres of grass so thick, you can't see the soil. I don't even know what color soil it is. He's doubled his stocking rate. He has no bed buildings. He never feeds during winter. Cost him about $80 to $85 to get a kit from Burke to market. For neighbors, it cost them around $200, $205. But it's all in managing the grass. We'll cover some of that later. Well, you walk out in the woods or the prairie and look around, you see a lot of life. But if you look down, you see an equal amount of death. Nothing lives forever. In nature, when something dies, it just falls right there on top of the ground. And each year there's a new deposit of dead things, dead leaves, dead twigs, dead insects, dead animals, animal droppings. Well, something better be happening to it, or the earth would now be miles deep in dead. Well, as that mulch builds up to a point, now when the big heavy rains come, they can't run off. That mulch holds them. Well, right at the soil level, there's a constant moisture and a constant temperature. And this is where the grubs and the pill bugs and the earthworms and the millipedes and all this little life loves to work, because it's always cool and a constant moisture. And they're chomping up on this organic material right there at the soil level, and they're bringing it down to a point. Then the microbes, bacteria, fungi, algae, and all these other things, then they feed on that and make it back into plant nutrients. And then with this activity of the earthworms and the grubs and everything boring up and down, this water can quickly soak into the ground. Well, it carries these nutrients with it that the microbes release, their dead bodies and all. And the soil filters out the nutrients in the root zone, and the water continues on down as clear water, and it ends up in the aquifers, or it keeps the springs flowing clear as spring. So you see, nature has been mulching and composting the surface of the earth since the beginning of time. So if you mulch your yard and your garden all the time, people ask if you compost, you tell them, yes, I compost nature's way. Because it's always going to drop from the bottom up. That's the way nature is. Let me show you how well the mulch works. After we got into the fertilizer business and everything, the compost business, we were selling as much as 100 tractor-trailer loads of pine bark a year. During the busy season, it was one every day. Meanwhile, the tree trimmers were throwing away the stuff they were pruning on the power lines, and I kept telling the landscapers, why don't you use this native mulch? They said, no, it doesn't look natural. That is, pine bark was natural for San Antonio. Well, I got a little hay grinder, and I modified it, and I ground up some of that native tree trimmings, and I spread a cubic yard out right here, and I spread another cubic yard of East Texas bark out, and I put a sprinkler between them, and I started overnight, we put down 2 inches of rain. 4 days later, we had a ½ inch of rain, and then we had no variable rainfall on the farm that year for 113 days, which was a good opportunity to do a test. Well, after a couple of weeks, I stuck a moisture meter in the ground about right there. See where that moisture meter is? Dry. After 2 weeks, soil is dry. Inch and a quarter deep. Then I put the moisture meter to either mulch pile. See where the needle is now? It's wet. Far to the wet side of the dial as it can go. So I went to see how long it would stay moist under those 4 inches of mulch. Every Monday, I took a reading. For 60 days, the needle stayed pegged out on the wet side of the dial. 60 days. The last reading I took was on the 105th day, and the needle got right here between 5 and 6. 105 days. Then it rained a few days later at the end of the test. During that time, one day, wait a minute. To see how much moisture was down in there after those 105 days, I dug down. There was enough moisture under that mulch where you could have put in a bare root plant, pressed the soil tight, put the mulch back, it would survive and grown without adding any water. Anyway, one day doing that test, the ambient temperature was 104 degrees in the afternoon, so I wanted to see what the soil temperature was versus on the mulch. Bare soil, 120 degrees. I stuck the thermometer in there. The thermometer got so long in there far enough to where it would stand up and not fall over. Then I put the thermometer under either mulch pile, same distance, 85 degrees. Nothing can live in 120 degree dry soil. All like 80, 85 degree moist. You see how frayed up this native mulch is? I finally got a landscaper to try some because he was putting bark on a slope and it kept sliding off, washing off. And he tried this native mulch and it stuck in place. Well, that broke the ice. And then the other landscaper started using it because it's a whole lot cheaper, no freight built into it. And it went along, the landscapers start telling me wherever they use this native mulch around the plant, it grows much better than it does with pine bark. I got to thinking about that when you use pine bark. It's got a lot of phenols and terpenes and tannins and things like that are slightly phytotoxic. And it's almost all carbon. The carbon-nitrogen ratio is like 200 or 400 to 1. Well, with a native mulch, you got the buds, the twigs, the leaves, the cambium layer, and a lot of nutrients. The carbon-nitrogen ratio of it is like 40 to 1 instead of 400 to 1. So the native mulch, when you got the whole tree, nature don't just mulch with bark. Why should we mulch? Mulch with the whole tree, the whole plant. San Antonio, we're always in panic every summer because we run out of water. Oxford goes way down. I made a remark, if everybody would just mulch the yard, we wouldn't have a water problem. This little guy, he took me serious. He don't own a lawnmower, he don't own a water hose. He let the tree trimmers dump the mulch there for several years, and he kept spreading it out. Pretty soon smothered out all the weeds, and then when he got rid of the planted shrubs and fruit trees and flowers, all he did was bark them off. He could dig the soil with his hands, and he put the roots in and press it tight and put the mulch back. Now, I was telling this story up in Wichita Falls. Young County Agent invited me up there to give a talk at their home show. And when I mentioned how melted soil was, he stood up and he said, "Beck, I've got to tell you all this story." He says, on both sides of my driveway was St. Augustine line. On one side, the kids always parking cars, and pretty soon that soil would get as hard as concrete and grass would grow there, and I wanted to stop them from parking cars there. So the tree trimmers came by, and I had them dump a whole load of the native tree trimmers. He said, I procrastinated. It was 2 years before I finally moved that pile of mulch. He said, when I got down to the soil, he said it was so mellow and soft, I could dig that deep with my bare hand. That's what mulch is. Some of y'all may know Chip Cassidy, county agent, Hayes County, where he's retired now. So Cliff always would bring me to the county to get talked over, and he's always telling me about his peach trees that he only mulched. And the way he talked, I figured they must have 12 or maybe even 20 or 30 trees. So in the spring, I finally went to visit Cliff. He has 1,200 peach trees mulched in an area where there is no water. There's none piped there, and there's none to be drilled for. He gets the tree trimmers. Well, first of all, he gets a grader out there, being a county agent. He gets a grader out there, and he has to grade all the topsoil in a pile, a ridge. So down here, it just has subsoil and not going to be many weeds growing in it. And the trees get to grow in all topsoil. And then he puts the mulch on top of it and lets it there for a year or longer. And then he digs down into the mulch and he puts in a bare root tree, and he's got a 300-gallon tank he puts behind his tractor on wheels. He uses that little hose there just to water it in. That's all the water they get. Now with that mulch, around our area north of San Antonio, we have Lake Freeze, and there's very few peaches made. Cliff made a good peach farm. And he goes to the farmer's market and sells them all. And I went by his house and blasted the weather all the farmer's market, went over there, and I thought he was going to give me a break. No, I paid $40 for a half a bushel. That's $8 a bushel for peaches. Not bad. This is what we have all over the north side of San Antonio. The hill country is covered with cedar. I mean, it's almost growing the land. And really, that's our salvation. Now, they claim that each one of those big junipers can transpire to the air 16 gallons of water every day. Now, I don't know if they can do that much, but they do use up a lot of water. And the first inch and a half rain that falls never gets into the soil because a lot of it stays in the needles or in the mulch that's under the tree, and as you get to that mulch, they got a root under there like a cactus, it grabs it off. But those things could be our salvation. Now this is a completely different cedar from what y'all have over here. This particular cedar here is a juniper ash, and it's not toxic in any way. You can grind up the green boughs, the bark, the fresh wood, or what have you, and mulch the plant with it and make it grow. You can put a plant in it. But the cedar over here is for Juniper virginiana, and it's a lot more aromatic. It's got more phenols and things. It's better for cedar pollen and stuff than for insects to come. And plants don't like to grow it. So this cedar is not as good. It's got advantages over ours and vice versa. Anyway, this cedar could be used to a big advantage. It could solve our water problem with this big machine right here. We call it a cedar reader because that's what they use it for now. They'll go into a cedar tree and just grind it down. bulk fillers. When they were first doing this, they got me up there and wanted me to tell them they were doing a good job or give them some advice, and they were grinding it all up real fine. And I said, oh, no, don't do that. I said, it's laying on the ground too thick, it's going to mat over, and the native grasses can't come through. And you have too much carbon surface exposed, and you're going to cause the carbon nitrogen tide. And I said, that's all going a lot of way at the same time. I said, let it big, look ugly. They said, well, that'd save us some money, so they're doing it. And the first rain, the grass and the weeds are coming through it. This is 16 weeks after they ground it down. And here's a broader view of that area. This is maybe a year and a half later. The place is covered with grass. So I asked this rancher, I said, well, why did you reseed with? He says, the seed was there. The seed can lay in the soil for years and years, and it won't sprout until conditions are perfect. That's native seed. That's the way nature is. Now that man has value, but look at the value of San Antonio, because this is over the recharge zone to our aquifer. All the water now is held in place instead of running down to the creeks and ending up in the Gulf of Mexico. And it can soak in or run to the creeks real slow. Let me show y'all how much soil we're losing from our farm and ranch land. This is the high bridge across the Pecos River, Highway 90 West, going towards Big Bend. This picture was taken in 1962. It's 273 feet from the water up to the pavement, 1,310 feet long. Let's go back to the bridge. There's three concrete columns and a metal lattice work up here. Divide 4 into 273, what is that, 68 feet or something like that. Anyway, I was out there in October, and I took this picture. Look at that bottom concrete column, where it is. The 45, 50 feet of it under silt, just since 1962. And this is anywhere from 500 feet to 1,000 feet wide, all the way up where the biggest starts, all the way down to Amistad, and how much soil is in Amistad. 40, 50 foot of soil, that whole creek, because of poor farming practices. This is the way we used to think we had to build organic matter in the soil. When I was a kid, they put me on a big green John Deere tractor and they say, son, I want it clean. I don't want to see any green. I had that big disc plow, and they wanted to turn it under 7 inches deep, and they had a slab of green stuff on it. Now it's fermenting, making alcohol and what have you. Meanwhile, they've disturbed all the earthworms. They've turned all of the fine root hairs, beneficial soil life up to sunlight, and killed it. Now they're losing carbon dioxide to the air. Science has now found out that there's more numbers of species of life underground than there is above in any given area, and there's more tonnage of life underground than there is above. Now, the material that's above ground is designed different from the material that's underground. The stuff underground has a lot of ligaments in it. It's strong. It's got to withstand the blowing winds and driving rains and the hot sun and dust and everything else. But all the life underground is real, I won't say like jello in a sliding cake, more like an earthworm. And after we got through doing this, we let it dry out and run across with a big old Heron, and later a finer Heron, and we made a seed bed eventually. It's finally this stable. And we put all the carbon dioxide to it. That's where a lot of our farmland is going, or the energy is going. I was up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, giving a talk, and at the banquet, the speaker was a retired colonel that was appointed by the then president to study the impact the automobile was having on the economy and the environment. And he showed us that our economy rode on 4 tires carrying an internal combustion engine, high-octane fuel. And then he made a statement. He said if there was just some way we could figure out how to increase the organic content of our farmlands 0.1% every year, we would offset all of that carbon dioxide we're putting in the air. But they didn't know how to do it. No-till agriculture, mulching, organic gardening, organic farming does that. You can watch it go up. this made me think. I got with Kate Chandler and got him to dig up old records and talked to A&L Labs and found out that the organic content across the United States was somewhere between 3 and 8%. The Rio Grande Valley used to be between 3 and 5%. Now the Rio Grande Valley is like 0.2%, 0.5, 0.8% is even bigger, and it should be 3. I know a third-generation farmer down there that said the old timers told him when the valley was first opened for agriculture, they didn't need irrigation. Then it rained more now than it did back then, actually. This big rain. They needed no fertilizer, they needed no pesticide. And as the organic content went down, the need for irrigation, fertilizer, and pesticides went up, just like that. I got the books out, and I found out that the carbon dioxide in the air 125 years ago was about 270 parts per million. Now it's 380 to 385 parts per million. So I found out how Kate Chandler burns the soil or heats the soil and finds out how much organic matter is in people. And I got these records there where I got Dr. Dick Richardson to do the figuring for me. And if we was to weigh the excess carbon that's in the air and carbon dioxide and the carbon that's missing from the soil, they equal. Now we did put a lot of carbon dioxide in the air by burning fossil fuels, but there's a lot more trees now than there were back then. This whole country was pretty well prairie. Believe it or not, even around Bastrop State Park. I had an aunt and uncle live over at Pin Oak, that's outside of Smithfield. And my old aunt, of course, she'd be 140 years old now, she's still alive. She said her mother, her grandma told her where they lived, that looked just like Bristol State Park and Bastrop State Park. She says the only big trees were along Peach Creek or Gravelly Creek, she named them. She said there were big pin oaks and big loblolly pines and a few things like that. And where their house was, it's a jungle now, she said that was prairie, grass this tall, and the deer jumped up and down like this. And Dale Winter, when he did his study of Texas, and his cutoff date was 1850, the whole state was almost prairie, and now we're almost a jungle. So we didn't talk about carbon in trees. This is not the way to farm. You need to keep that on top of the ground and don't turn the soil upside down. Let's go out to West Texas. Remember when New York had no place to dump their sludge? They loaded on a train, started coming towards the southwest, and I said, "Off my backyard." Well, when they got down there to Sierra Blanca, those ranchers out there said, "Hey, you send that stuff to us free and pay us to dump it, you can dump it here." Well, they have no choice. So they got this big ranch and they moved all the Frisco brush down and they put a rail spur in there and he unloaded this stuff and got these big buggies and they're spreading it out. And I know we're pumping out there and I went out there a few times. I was on a committee to help that get started. And that stuff is belt press New York sludge. And it's 6% moisture. It's biologically active, a lot of microbial activity, and it stinks. You can smell it 7 miles away. Well, the second time I was out there, one of the employees who was running one of them buggies came up to me in kind of a low voice, like it didn't want anybody to hear. He said, "Becky, something strange about this stuff." He said, "This ground is dry, it hadn't rained here in months and months and months." He said, "That stuff got moisture in it." He says, "We dump it here in a few days, the grass turns green, seems like it's starting to grow." All I could think of was wishful thinking. But I saw the same thing happen when the highway department inspected in 3,000 yards of compost around 1604 when they rebuilt it and had some shoulders eroding. And I sold them Dillo Dirt, that's the Austin biosolids compost. And they spread it out there and it was a dry year and I kept thinking, man, I wish it would rain so they could see the result of this stuff. Well, you know, the grass that was showing through got greener. How is that possible? Anyway, here is this box where it was soil out there in West Texas. That's a little over 2 years later. Look at the grass. And that's growing with about 10 or 12 inches of rainfall. See how thin it is here? Here's some soil. That grass can grow a lot of places, it's already eroded away. When they get a rain out there, if they get a 5 or 6 or 8 inch rain, then it may not rain for a whole year. And you can grow grass like that. Well, one day I was sitting in the airport and I was thumbing through a magazine and I saw this picture. And I recognized it as the pores on a plant leaf. You know, a plant, grass, all plant, have opening, sweat glands, some people call it. This is called a stomata. It's capable of opening and closing. It opens and leaves out moisture and takes in air, and then closes and takes the carbon out of the carbon dioxide that's in the air and digests it, or uses puts a hydrogen molecule with it, and with the help of chlorophyll and sunlight somehow it makes carbohydrates, energy, food, sugars, I guess you would say. And then the oxygen that it broke out of carbon dioxide is released through the air. Well, this study was being done by NASA scientists. And a NASA scientist found out that whenever there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, that stomata stays shut much longer. And when it opens, it don't stay open very long. And the old plant physiology books will tell you that a plant will transpire to the air 99% of the water it takes out of the soil and transpires it to the air. Well, if we can keep that stomata shut, say 10-15% longer, there's that much extra moisture we can save in the soil. Well, this NASA scientist found out when that stomata is open, it's transpiring moisture, it's losing moisture, it's sweating. That has a cooling effect. And when that stomata is shut, the leaf heats up. So his conclusion was there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the air. That too is causing global warming because it's causing the leaf to stay warm longer, 2 degrees. He missed the main point. Look at the water you can save in the soil if you can keep that stomata shut. Well, anytime you use mulch or compost or have organic matter, organic fertilizers under a plant, as the microbes break it down, they're releasing carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is slightly heavier than air, so the carbon dioxide tends to hover around the forest floor or in the canopy of the grass. It can't quickly diffuse into the atmosphere because the wind down there is not near as strong. Well, if you got green leaf surface, then the stomata, that opening there stays shut much longer, because when it opens, it quickly gets a mouthful of carbon dioxide, you might say, and then when it shuts, it can stay shut much longer because it's taking longer to digest all of this carbon dioxide. And that's one of the main reasons these HRM ranchers are able to double their stocking rate. They've learned to graze the animals like the buffalo graze. The books tell us, the historians tell us, that at one time there were more buffaloes in this country, way more buffaloes than we have animals today. And they did destroy the prairie. They roamed in tight herds. And they did that for protection from the wolves and the mountain lions. Well, they're in these tight herds, and they're moving along constantly. And since they're in a tight herd, they kind of bite off all the grass, all the fords, instead of like we, have the cattle loosely spaced. Our cows will run around picking out the ice cream, you might say, until that grass is gone, and then they pick out the next grass. Well, buffalo couldn't do that. Also, they were dropping a lot of urine and manure as they were moving along and eating that grass and dropping it down into, down into the litter, you might say, that's on the ground. And by the time they moved off, this urine and manure is still moist, is active. The microbes are breaking it down now, and releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. Well, the buffalo only ate the grass. If it was this tall, they only ate it down a third of the way, maybe halfway. That left a lot of green leaf surface there, so that grass could quickly recover. Now with that extra carbon dioxide, it keeps the stomata shut much longer. It can make carbohydrates much faster, and it can quickly recover. Well, when I was a kid, Grandpa and my dad, if they saw a patch of grass down there that wasn't being grazed, to them that was sin, it was a waste. And they grazed it down, bare this floor. Now, if you graze grass down as bare as this floor, how is it going to recover? There's no green leaf surface to capture carbon dioxide and make carbohydrates, energy for the roots. So the roots have to give up some of the carbohydrates that the plant gave it early, and this strains the devil out of the roots. And it puts up the green leaf surface. Well, if the cow comes along and bites that off, pretty soon that root has more carbohydrates and that grass dies. But if you do it properly, you can maintain the forest and it only gets healthier and better all the time. Can y'all understand that? It took me 45 years to finally figure this out. After we moved on to the new farm, we started, setting out about 5,000 to 7,000 tomato plants and several thousand bell pepper eggplants and stuff like that, and the fall cabbage and broccoli and everything. And that gets expensive if you're going to buy those plants, so we decided to build ourselves a little greenhouse. Well, even on this new farm, every time there's some dignitaries would come to San Antonio to the Extension Service, well, Sam Cochran and George Washington would bring them out to our farm to see what these organic fatties were doing. And one day, it's four of these guys. I remember one of them was Dr. George Ray Kitchens, you all may know him. Anyway, George Ray pointed to our little greenhouse there. I was just doing construction yet. He said, Malcolm, there's one thing you won't go organic with, and they all chimed in and assured me of that. We weren't going to go organic with that greenhouse. Well, it was built there in 1972. And in the beginning, we had bedding plants. And then later on, we stopped farming on the wife, she could all and stuff like that. But to this day, there's never been a troublesome insect or disease in that greenhouse ever without even trying. And now I know why, because every time we watered, Dale would water with a solution of fish and most of liquid seaweed. We didn't know about molasses then. And the floor was covered with cedar flakes from the cedar oil mill that I was sowing that stuff, using it for mulch and everything. Well, with all of this nutrient water dripping on the soil, because she soaked things, let it run through. When that greenhouse was closed up on a bright but sunny day, there was a lot of carbon dioxide release, and those plants could continue growing all day long on a bright but cold day when the greenhouse was closed up. Well, the big greenhouse operators years ago discovered that if you got say a concrete floor and you got a lot of hanging baskets in there and stuff, that the plants would stop growing sometimes by 10 o'clock because they ran out of carbon. The most abundant thing in a plant, especially a tree, is carbon. But the books don't tell you that. It says the plant needs water, NP, and K, minors, and traces. The plant has to have carbon, and it takes it out of carbon dioxide and releases the oxygen for us. And you've got to close that greenhouse to run out of carbon. The plant can't grow, and it's stressed. Well, our little greenhouse, we always had ample carbon. That was the reason. We didn't even know it at the time. I knew a guy named Jack Hardy. He had a big hydroponic greenhouse, all glass, water, and concrete, and he grew tomatoes, and he was a real scientist, and all day long he would test those solutions. And he had the sorriest tomatoes, he couldn't sell them the money. Then he figured out, hey, short carbon dioxide. So instead of putting some compost or putting mulch on the floor, they piped in carbon dioxide. Well, that just destroyed the value of the fruit. You can't do it that way. You got to have a balance. You got to have those roots in the proper nutritional conditions. And when you got the mulch on the soil, over the roots, and compost in the soil, and a lot of decay there, well, you're feeding those roots. And the carbon dioxide release is greatest when the moisture and temperature is greatest for plant growth. So everything's in balance all the time. You can't do that, by piping carbon dioxide in. You got to keep it in balance. Let me show you another greenhouse. I used to belong to the Greenhouse Spectators Association with Dr. Larson and Dr. Blackburn, and we would go around to different greenhouses and see what people are doing. And people trying to grow vegetables in a greenhouse, boy, that's a problem. I mean, you end up with nematodes and diseases. That's all people are doing, constantly fighting diseases. Well, this old guy right here, he worked with me on the railroad. I worked on the railroad 32 years. That's how I supported the farm. Anyway, he loved to grow things. He only went to the 8th grade. He had no education much. But he had a green thumb. And he decided to build himself a 6,000 square foot greenhouse. He's at Sutherland Springs, not far from Stockton. Got a lot of chicken around Stockdale. So he went over and got 2 pickup loads of chicken manure and tilled it into the soil. And I gave him cedar flakes to mulch with. And he grew his own plants. He put those plants in there, and he watered out of the Cibolo Creek and pumped water up there. And for cooling, he opened the north and south walls on him. For heat, he had these big round smudge pots that you have a stack in the middle. You put diesel or kerosene or any kind of oil in it, light it with a gasoline rag, and you get them generating, they work real well. Well, he had 3 of those in that greenhouse, and he burnt the waste crankcase off from the locomotive off the railroad. And I thought, man, that's going to be a smoky mess. But once that thing got to generating, it was only took a few minutes, nothing but heat came out of that pipe. And it would burn all night. And by the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock, when the sun was up good, and it had burned out. By then, there'd be a real thin layer of white ash on the bottom of that pot. That was all. So he would use waste crankcase off. So it had no expense. His only expense was seed and paper bags. I asked him one time, I said, Roscoe, you keep records of how many tomatoes you sold? He said, no. He said, I don't keep a record, sell everything cash. He said, I think he said he had 4,000 or 3,000, something like that, paper bags. And he said, I got this many left. Well, here's his greenhouse. I took some of those greenhouse specialists down there and they just scratched their heads and never did figure that out. No cause, every tomato is perfect. The bottom leaves, as soon as the tomato got full grown, start to turn, you'd break those bottom leaves off so you could have good circulation, because they were no longer feeding the tomato anyway. Yeah, I made good money for 4 years. Then a tornado broke the greenhouse and that ended the research. But you can do it in the greenhouse without any chemicals, chicken manure and moss. That's all he used. There's a lady came to our store one day and trying to sell me this product. She called it Grow Web. And she came back the next year and she was so persistent. I said, all right, Mary, I'll try something. So I planted some tomatoes and I put 2 cages around them and I put this stuff over it and didn't anchor it well. North wind come along, blew it all the way like a box kite. So next time I mulched the tomatoes good with compost and I put this stuff down on the ground, anchored it really. And then we set out all our other tomatoes. And lo and behold, the tomato plants under that little web tripled in growth. And as soon as the leaves were touching the sides everywhere, I took it off and then it tripled in production. So then I got our horticulturist, Dr. Gary Parsons, of the Extension Service to try, and he got the same results. And he made a statement. He said that is the best tool that has ever come along for the home garden because it does so many things. It'll give you a few degrees frost protection. It'll slow the wind down, keep the insects off so you won't get virus, you won't need pesticide. It diffuses the sunlight. These old plant physiology books I got tell us that when the sunlight is really intense, say from noon to 4 o'clock, a lot of times photosynthesis shuts down, the plant stops growing, the sun is too intense. And then with a lot of study, they found out plants would really like the sunlight only about 2/3 or 3/4 of the intensity that we have in this part of the country, say from noon to 4 o'clock. Well, this web does that. It diffuses the sunlight, so it's not too hot at one spot, and it kind of reflects it all over the plant. There's really no shading area, so you get greater photosynthesis, more sunlight. And the big reason it traps the carbon dioxide out there, so the plant always has a lot of carbon to feed from. That's the most nutrient it needs next to water. Carbon. And you get it from decaying organic matter. Dell and I was up in Lubbock. I've given a talk this years ago, and the farmer there asked my wife and I to spend the night at their house. Well, that's a whole lot better than going to Holiday Inn. But at the supper table, this lady brought out some pictures. And I looked at these pictures and I said, my gosh, all cotton's all over. She said, that's not our cotton. She said, that's a neighbor's cotton right there across that dirt lane about 70 feet from our cotton. She said, here's our cotton. I looked at her and I said, I guess you're going to tell me these pictures were taken the same year. She said, not in the same year, the same thing. So I looked at her husband and he said, that's right. I said, well, you're going to have to tell me what the difference is. He said, well, he graduated from A&M, and one thing they did teach him was to keep records. Him and his dad was farming, mostly cotton. I think it's 2,500 acres. This is at west of Lubbock at Rosefield. And he said one nasty day he was in the house, nothing to do, and he was studying through the books, and he saw production costs going up and up and up. But production was going the wrong way. He said, you don't have to be very smart to know you'd be bankrupt if you don't make some changes. So him and his dad quickly got rid of all the rented acres they had and kept their own section, whatever it was. And he started studying alternative farming methods, and he got some information on low-till, no-till, conservation tillage. and he said he thought he'd try it. But he said the hardest thing for him to learn was to keep his butt off the tractor. You know, farmers love the tractor. That was me too. Well, he said when he found out when he stopped plowing deep and turned the soil upside down and run a big harrow across it, he wasn't losing moisture that was way down. And with a shallow cultivation, he could create a little bit of dust mulch, and he'd hold that moisture in there. And that little bit of soil he worked up on top, he could bed it up into a bed, and he always had a bed to plant his cotton. And by not plowing deep, he wasn't burying seeds deep and plowing up seeds from previous years. He said, pretty soon after a few shallow cultivations, he no longer had a weed problem. He didn't need to use herbicide. He said, man, this is working pretty good. He said, I better look into some of these other alternative farming methods. So he started looking at the snake oil, the fufu dust and stuff like that. That's what the farmers call it. You know, something like Medina, Agri-Grow, or whatever. Well, he was buying these things, and they all looked like they were doing so good. This one farmer or salesman came back and said, now if you're going to use this product, you need to use some sugar or molasses with it. So he said, I figured I'd try that, but I made sure none of my neighbors saw me spray molasses. Anyway, he said, I started using this guy's product with molasses. I think he's using 2 parts of the product and a gallon of molasses per acre. And he did that 4 times early in the season. The first time he planted up about 4 to 7 inches, or 4 to 7 leaves rather, and then every 10 days after that for 4 times. He said on that program, he said, my gosh, my cotton started growing better, and I just stopped using other fertilizer. He said the irrigation equipment wore out years earlier that overall was getting so deep it was hard to reach it anyway. He said, I don't use any fertilizer, I don't use any pesticides, no insecticides, or anything. He said, then I found out my cotton qualified to be sold as organic. And he would get as much as 70 cents a pound more for his cotton than the neighbors would. Now, in a dry year, he would make as much cotton as irrigated farmers did, but he always took more money for that. Well, I had to know what was in that product. He gave me a jug of it, and I couldn't read the label. I brought it home, and a friend of mine was an A&M graduate, majored in agronomy, and I let him read. He said, oh, I recognize these names. The first one was Azotobacter, the next one was Crispladium, or something like that, and the other one was Bacillus. He said, these are free nitrogen fixers, microbes that can take nitrogen directly out of the air. And he brought out his college textbook that he studied. He used it at Texas A&M. This is a 52 issue of Soil and Soil Fertility by Lewis M. Thompson. And there was a chapter in there on Azotobacter. And Lewis M. Thompson wrote the book. First, Thompson quoted there was either 2 or 3 other researchers that studied the Azotobacter, and they concluded that it would have very little value in agriculture because these microbes are too inefficient at taking nitrogen out of the air and building it into their body. Well, Lewis Thompson understood energy. Nothing can happen without energy. So he brought the Azotobacter into the lab and he fed them sugar weekly. And in a 10-week period, he fixed the equivalent of 1,000 pounds of nitrogen per acre. So that's where this guy was getting his nitrogen from. Just spraying that microbe out there and feeding it carbohydrate, molasses. I took samples of his soil in a neighbor's field and I sent them into 2 separate labs, and they came back almost the same. There's very little difference. Now, up there in that area, the phosphorus, potassium, and all the other minors and traces, it's rich in it. And the nitrogen was coming out of the air on this field, but where is he getting the moisture? Well, years ago, Howard Garrett introduced me to a magazine, ARS magazine, and he featured a Dr. Donald Marks that was with the USDA. And he was a mycorrhizal specialist. And he had pictures in there of the mycorrhizal fungi. Well, I read about the mycorrhizal fungi earlier in a book called Soil and Health by Sir Albert Howard. Albert Howard was a British scientist sent all over the British Empire to help the poor farmers. Well, back then they didn't have fertilizer and there wasn't enough manure to go around. So Albert Howard had been to Asia and he was showing the farmers, I think this was in India at the time, how to take roadside trash and all the leaves and weeds and stuff they could gather up and put down a layer and a thin layer of manure and then a thick layer of green weed, weight, like that, put down full dirt. And after he got the ferment, he turned pile a few times and he had compost. So he had a research area and he put compost compost on some of these plants and not on their others. And the ones you put compost under around as a mulch, boy, they flourished. So Albert Howard got thinking, man, this is valuable stuff. So he sent it to the lab, and as far as NPK, it just wasn't there. You know, it was real low, like most compost is, 0.7, 0.7, 0.7. And he noticed those plants were using compost even had immunity to insects and diseases. Not only did they flourish and produce more, they had less problem. So he decided he would look at the roots. And wherever he used compost, the roots looked like this. That's a picture that the USDA did. I guess that's a little pine tree. This is the mycorrhizal fungi that Albert Howard discovered. There was a German scientist named it a year earlier. Well, Don Marks found out with the Forest Service that when they tried to reestablish the new pine trees on an old clear-cut area, they wouldn't grow unless they went and got soil out from under an old pine that was still alive. And then they found that it was because of that fungi. So what that fungi does, it grows into the root of the plant. Now that little plant is up there in sunlight, not a very big plant. And the pores open, take in air, they take the carbon out of the carbon dioxide and make carbohydrates out of it. So 80% of the carbohydrates is sent down to the root. Well, this fungi is underground. It has to have energy, but it's not in the presence of sunlight. It can't manufacture energy. It doesn't have green torpor. So what this fungi does, it grows into the roots of the plant, or wraps itself around the root, or into the cell, depends on the species. And it steals 10%, give or take a little, of the carbohydrates that that little plant sends down to the root. Well, that plant's little, it can only steal about a few drops. If it can get that plant to grow into a massive big pine tree, then it can steal probably a few gallons of carbohydrates. It has to have carbohydrates for it to do it. Well, now that it has carbohydrates, it can grow out into the soil massively. And what it does, it doesn't want that little tree to die. So it gathers nutrients, what that plant needs, and the moisture that that plant needs, and helps it grow. That's a true symbiotic association. Well, I asked LeVoy Lowry, he was a cotton grower, if I could go into his field and dig up cotton plants, and dig up cotton plants in the other guy's field. He said, yeah, he wouldn't care. And I called Dr. Don Marks, and I asked him if the mycorrhizal fungi could be playing a part in these two cotton fields. And he said, oh, I guarantee you it is. And he told me to send these root balls, dirt and all, didn't want to talk, to a certain lab. And, well, 2 or 3 weeks later, he sent me a fax back. He said, Malcolm, there's a striking difference between these two fields. He said, this field right here has the equivalent of 10 times more root because of the amount of mycorrhizal fungi that was growing on the roots. The equivalent of 10 times more root. He says, this cotton field here, he said, I found 2% on one root. So I asked Dr. Marks, I said, why the difference? He said, well, all I can tell you is this guy here is doing something to destroy the beneficial soil life. Mainly, overcultivation, deep plowing, overtilling, deep plowing. That's the worst enemy to the mycorrhizal fungi. Like Dr. Marks tells me that you got a growing plant out there, and it's feeding the mycorrhizal is growing, everything is fine. You come along and plow that plant out, you kill that plant, and you destroy that mycorrhizal before it gets a chance to put out spores or seeds. He said, but if you cut it off shallow, or even use a herbicide on it, or let the freeze kill it, he said that plant dies slow, and that fungi recognizes that, and before it gets destroyed by something, it quickly puts out seed. So when the next plant grows there, it quickly gets inoculated. No-till agriculture, that's what they've been researching on in the Rio Grande Valley, or South Texas rather, for the past 15 or 20 years. Dr. Joe Bradford was doing all that research. And I read an article about him and saw his picture in an ARS magazine. And I called him, and I was helping, at that time I helped Fred Walker put on a conference in San Antonio, and I asked So he agreed to come. I told him, I said, you won't be talking to graduate students, you're gonna be talking to farmers. All they want is a message. They don't care if you butchered English language or stuff. Well, he said, set me up first. We set him up first. And when he's through his talk, the farmers gathered around. And he got interested in the whole conference. He stayed for the whole conference. He visited with the exhibitors and talked to farmers and went back to the Rio Grande Valley and decided he was going to do organic research. So he started coming up to our business and buying truckloads of stuff, and I'm going to give it to him. He said, no. He said, you can't give it to me because it's got to be impartial. And called him one time and asked him how you doing. He said, all right, I'm doing good. He said, why don't you come look? So Howard and Garrett and I, we drove to the valley, and he had organic cotton this high, so thick, you couldn't walk through it. The bows, the limbs were crossed like this, and the bows would hang up, you'd have to carry away through it. And conventional cotton was about this tall, little plants like this, you could see this much of the bare root. And he was excited. Well, here about 3 years later, I got to be good friends with Joe. About 3 years ago, he called me and he said, Malcolm, I'm worried. I said, why are you worried about it? He said, well, he said, I'm not sure this new director we're getting a new director. He said, I'm not sure he's going to allow me to use USDA money to do organic research. And I said, well, I hope. Well, I was down there a month or two later in South Padre giving a talk, and I told Dale, I said, let's go by and see Joe Bradford. So I called him and asked him to be there, and he said, oh, Malcolm, please hurry. He's all excited. When I got there, he met me in the hall, grabbed my arm, didn't even shake hands, and he drug me down a couple buildings. He introduced me to Dr. Jerry Quisenberry. This is a big old tall country looking guy standing there, and I looked down here, laid one of my books on his desk, open. I said, Dr. Quisenberry, I see you got one of my books. He said, yeah. He said, I've only been here 4 days, and I've read most of it. And then he looked at me and he says, Beck, he said, this valley's in bad shape. I said, that's common knowledge. He says, with a little help from people in the industry like you, I'd like to take the Rio Grande Valley and make it the biggest organic research area in the whole United States. I said, you'll get the help, but I said, but don't use the word organic when you go to Congress. Use the word sustainable. Then they can't refuse. Well, I right away went to HRM, I'll remember, and told, hey, we got to have a conference down there. Joe Bradford and Dr. Quisenberry need support. And HRM told me, well, we got everything planned out through 2003. Well, you're a board of directors, go down and do it. So I went down and held a little conference. Got about 120 people there. And while there, we drafted up a letter. And I then got that thing, and all of us got that thing sent to everybody in the United States we could think of, except the Sierra Club, Audubon Society, you name it. We send the letters to them, asking them to talk to their congressman and to support the sustainable research that's the USDA PhDs would like to do at the Chico de la Guarda Research Center. And you have only 2.5 weeks. I got an email from Dr. Quisenberry. He said, Malcolm, it's amazing what a few letters will do. He said, we got permission to go full speed ahead with sustainable agriculture, and they want us to compare organic with conventional. They would do that again. Anyway, this year, he met with K.B. Hutchinson and Ken Golea, I think they're 2 state senators, said we need some money to go do this research. They got an extra $1 million added to the budget. And when I think Steve and I and Louise was down there, I think that's when he told us that they're going to drop all other research and only do organic sustainable research. They've already researched no-till. They've proven that. So if we can keep giving them support and keep writing our congressmen, we can keep it going. Well, Louise, I, and Steve, and the group down there got a conference plan for January 21, 22, and 23. Well, the USDA changed a meeting that they had set up for all of the research heads to coincide with our meeting, so Joe Bradford couldn't make that meeting. So we moved our meeting a week later. So we're going to have a big farm conference down there to get all the information we need from Steve and Louise. And it's all going to be on organic. And one of the speakers is here. Dick Pierce is here. Right there. He's going to tell us all about ancient American agriculture. And I can't wait. And this is the 3rd conference we're having down there. And this time I told Dr. Bradford and Jerry Quisenberry that if all of the USDA researchers that they've hired now, if they're not all there for the whole conference, to meet with all of the exhibitors, and to meet all of the people that show up, and meet with the other speakers that I wasn't interested, we weren't interested in putting on, they said we will be. I said, otherwise you guys be working in vacuum, so we got things going. Steve, how much time I got? Well, you know that. Keep going. If y'all need to leave, this thing goes on longer. If y'all need to leave, I'll stay here to midnight to make it. I go to my aunt's sleep, I was where I did. Anyway, it's no-kill agriculture. I got to tell you that. There's 4 big environmental problems worldwide. Worldwide. First one is soil erosion. That's causing all the other 3 really. You saw soil erosion when I showed you that bridge over Pecos. And the next one is water shortages. Again, crop farming methods solve that. Healthy soil, a lot of green matter, mulches and compost. Solves the water problem. The next one is nitrates in the water supply. San Antonio is supposed to have one of the best aquifers in the country, Edwards Aquifer. There was a guy out trying to sell me a filter. I said, man, I don't need a filter. I got the Edwards. I got my own wellhead for the nitrates. That's all. I got it tested, guess what? 9 parts per million. Sometimes it goes up to 15. Most of the time it's down around 4 or 5. So I called San Antonio Water System, asked them if they knew how much nitrate was in the city water supply. They said, well, we know it's okay. So I know it's okay. They said, well, we got a company that does weekly or monthly tests, and they only tell us if it's beyond 10 parts per million. They don't know. This stops all of it. It stops soil erosion, stops water shortages. It keeps nitrates. You can use less fertilizer. You'll use less pesticide. You'll use less herbicide once you get it started and everything working out. That's the way to do it. That's the way nature's been doing it since the beginning of time. The guy walked in the office one day carrying a Ziploc bag like this, and he kind of talked slow, and he said he had some microbes in that bag that would kill pythium, copper, and then the whole bunch more root rot. And I asked him, I said, well, how about cottonroot rot? And he said, well, we can't isolate it in the lab. We're hoping maybe you do a field test. I said, all right, put it down there. He said, no, this is a live vegetative state. It needs to be put in the refrigerator. So I put it in the refrigerator. Anyway, I forgot about it. And it's okra planting time. That's the last thing we're going to plant because they like warm weather. And anyway, I took the big seed cans off my planter and I put a 2x4 back there for Delphine to sit on. She dropped the seed when where and how she wants it. And I was planting that first row of okra right there. And I looked back and Dell, man, she's really dropping that seed thick. And I said, honey, you're dropping way too thick. She said, shut up and dry it. So I planted 2 rows of okra. She said, turn around. She planted 2 rows of black eyes. And she said, now I have 2 more rows of okra. And then I got to remember there was some root rot in this spot. So I told Dale, I said, you go fix supper while I soak some seed in this guy's product. I did that in kind of lukewarm water. When we got to eat, we came out and planted another 2 rows of okra. Not forgot about it. This guy shows up when okra's in full production. And he asked me, did you do the test? I said, oh, I forgot, let's go look. Then I noticed that the row we inoculated was much bigger and pretty than a control row. So we went up and down both rows and pulled up all these extra plants that they'll plant, good things you plant to your plants. And we looked at the roots, and boy, were we surprised. The control row, 28% of the plants, and we pulled a lot of them up, 28% had root rot and nematodes. In the row I inoculated, not a single root had root rot on it and no nematodes. Well, I went to the house and I called our horticulturist, Dr. Jerry Parsons. I said, Jerry, you better get out here and see this. He drove right out. I showed him these roots. He said, Beck, I do my own testing. I said, he said, what I can pull some plants up. And he went out there 5 minutes and he came back in the office saying, what is that stuff? And I looked at the guy who brought it. He said, we better call Crawford. I said, where's Dr. Crawford? He said, Moscow. I said, you didn't call him Moscow. He said, no, University of Idaho. Moscow, Idaho. Anyway, I put the phone on a conference table I had there, and I had it on speaker, and this guy, he called for Dr. Crawford, got him on the phone the first try. And I told him about these results. And man, he was ecstatic because he had just discovered this stuff. And this is the first field test. And he found out it worked beyond what he figured it would. So I asked him, I said, well, what is this stuff? And he said it's a Streptomyces type of Actinomycetes strain YW. I said, no, doc, you got to put that in my language. And he explained it like this. He said, whenever you got a plant that's flourishing and growing, as the root grows through the soil, it's sloughing off root skins, and of course it's giving off carbohydrates and all kinds of egg shoots. He said this microbe lives off those egg shoots, mainly that root skin. And he said as that plant root grows, it grows right along with it. It don't allow any disease organism to attack it. And I see now don't even let nematodes attack it. When he said that, Dr. Parsons was sitting there listening. All of a sudden, he slapped the table so hard the phone jumped, and we looked at Jerry. Jerry said, now I understand what a true symbiotic association is. He said, when I was in college, we tested these things. He said, we never could see where they were economical. He said, later on in the extension service, I supervised tests of these products. Again, we couldn't see where they were economical. He said, we were trying to use them as a silver bullet. When a plant got the diseases, we wanted to inject it and we wanted to cure it. It don't work out. He says, you have to do your share to keep the plant healthy. Only then will nature guarantee it to be healthy. So see how it works? You do your share. And then nature will guarantee it to be healthy. Of course, emulsions and compost, organic fertilizer, which does it. And here's some of the things that plant food gives off or is manufactured there in the rhizophere. Dr. Emaine Ingram said there's something like 10,000 species of bacteria live in the rhizophere around the root, orange or in it, and 3,000 species of fungi. And they're using the organic acids, the carbohydrates, nucleic acids, whatever that is, enzymes, growth factors, other beneficial compounds, and naturally occurring amino acids. All of it. These are all the things. And these are the soil life that feed from all of these things. And this soil life makes the soil richer, helps the plant grow, and so it can produce more of it. So see, it's plants helping the other life, and the other life helping the plant. But you got to have energy there before any of it can work. And energy comes from decaying organic matter. Here's the rules you grow by. Most organic gardeners, or most gardeners do this. Very best adaptive variety, that's the most important. And here we have two seasons, spring and fall, plant proper season. Need to balance the mineral content. Do have rock powders, that's the very best. Soil phosphate, clay, rock phosphate, salt, lava, granite, green sand, those things. And increase and maintain, right there, maintain the organic content. Mulch and compost, you gotta maintain it. And just once you get it built up, don't overkill the soil. Number 5, do nothing to harm the beneficial soil life. A lot of the chemicals out there that farmers use destroy the beneficial soil life. And consider troublesome insects and diseases as symptoms of one of the bug rules being violated. Now we're running out of time, so I'll stop right here. You'll have to come back next year to see the rest of it.
And if y'all have any questions, we've got a few minutes for questions from Malcolm.
As long as Steve let me.
We can be here till 12 o'clock tonight if y'all want to.
Want to turn the lights on?
Y'all have any questions for Malcolm?
I do. You spoke about Mr. Garrett. Did you write the book Hands-On Agronomy?
What?
Hands-On Agronomy?
Hands-on agronomy? I haven't made it.
Garrett?
That's the soil guy. One of those.
Oh.
That's the soil guy, hands-on agronomy. Okay.
Kinsey, Joe Kinsey.
Don't know, don't read. I read them all.
Oh, yeah, you.
Who's the man Garrett that you spoke of?
Howard Garrett, down 4 words, got that radio program.
Oh, that's
Yeah, that guy. But let me tell you how he got started. See, he's a big shot landscape architect. I mean, he does everything. And him and his wife had a hard time having a child. Finally, they had a little girl. She was 15 months old. He's out in the yard blasting toys over everything. Just sort of walking along and sticking stuff in her mouth. And Howard said, "Oh my gosh, had all this trouble having this child, now we're going to kill it." So he figured out, what can I do? So he called the TDA. And the TDA sent him to Gardenville Hospital. I owned that store at that time. But he came down, or happened to be there, and Howard just latched on to me. And he went and had it organic. And then Howard's just bottom line. I mean, he just skipped everything until he just go to the bottom line. In fact, there was a guy in my store one day. He was standing on our bookshelf, and he was reading through the books. He saw a book there, Plants and Metroplex, by Howard Carey. And this guy moaned to himself, "I used to know Howard Carey. Went through it." I said, "Maybe that's him." He said, "Oh, no, this way up Pittsburgh." I said, "That's him. Over the book there to fix it." So he did. He said, "Well, I'll read it." And I said, "What was Howard like in school?" He said, "Well, we call him Bottom Line Gary." He just goes to the bottom line. He don't really got MDs or what. He's a businessman. And how I got that radio program was WBAP needed a gardening show. They interviewed 4 or 5 people, and they asked them all those questions. Would you rather some God tell the truth? And I said, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. Howard said, well, that ain't gonna get you higher. Howard said, well, I'd rather sell a God. All right. Well, Howard, he's fanatical organic, but he don't love it. Boy, he's made more controversy. His radio station gets Blue Mill Spirit out of it. He's got a big audience. He's got something like 60 nurseries now that are 100% organic and making money now when they didn't before. And I don't know how many nurseries in the Metroplex area, and as far as these reaches. He's done a lot of good. Any questions about plants now we've got Howard covered?